Just waiting for it. There we go. Okay, folks, it's 2:30. We're going to get started here. We've got a pretty packed agenda, so don't want to waste any time. All right, here's our note well, the new note well, which we've all seen hopefully multiple times this week. Yep, this is a reminder of all the processes and policies that you've already agreed to by participating in IETF. This includes conduct, privacy, and IPR. Please read it carefully. You're encouraged to read the reference source documents, which you can access by scanning the QR code and following the links. If you've got any questions regarding this, you can talk to the chairs or the ADs. Standard meeting tips. Please make sure you sign over the data tracker. If you want to speak, kindly join the queue, announce your name while you're there. If you're remote, keep your audio off until you are up to speak. And if you have a headset, please use it. It avoids feedback. Typical resource. If you're already here, you've probably seen these links before. Here's our agenda. Scribe selection. I've already had Bron. Well, he's been voluntold, so thank you, Bron. First, we're going to go a quick update over drafts that we think are getting close to completion. We're going to talk about our active drafts, some proposed work, and finally, any other business. Is there any agenda bashing in terms of the order or anything else? I did slide things around a little bit. Ben was going to join us late, so he's been moved towards the end. And I squeaked out some time for DKG at the end. No agenda bashing. Okay, let's move on. The first draft here is the wrong recipient URL. I think we're currently waiting for implementations on that. I think otherwise the document is fairly complete. Would you agree, John? Yep, John Levine nods in the affirmative. Expires header field. I reread that today. I think it's pretty close to what we were looking for. Okay. The one thing I did see there's a section that has a link to current implementations, which was marked to be removed. I'm kind of thinking the opposite. I think since our charter requires us to have implementations, we should probably use the RFC 7942 implementation status section in all our drafts, just to document what we've done and what we know is out there and developed and interoperable. Yeah, the editors remove it anyways. I'm at partial, or I'm at object ID partial. Looks pretty good. There was some feedback from Matt, but I think we'll take that up later with the object ID, account ID stuff. Okay, great. Registration of keywords. We have some slides from Daniel. Let me get those slides.
Before we do that, this is Barry.
Sure.
I stuck myself in the queue.
Please.
Just clarifying what you said about 7942, whatever the 7942 actually says that you remove the implementation section. So are you suggesting that we leave it in after publication?
No, I may have referenced the wrong RFC. There's an RFC out there that suggests that you add an implementation status section while you're working on the draft to keep track of what's going on.
Right, that's the one that I'm talking about.
Yes.
But
we'll have the editor.
You are not suggesting leaving it in after publication?
I am not. I'm suggesting we leave it there
until it gets approved.
Until it gets approved. Yes.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted the clarification. That's all.
No, thank you. If I was unclear, I apologize. Daniel, you just have the one slide here, so there's really no reason for me to pass on control. So whenever you're ready to go ahead.
I hope the audio works. We did a lot of reorganizing of text, moved a lot of stuff around, but it mostly stayed the same except for some more inclusive language. And I think it's getting ready, sort of waiting for AD if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't recall if I've pushed the button to submit this or not, but if I haven't, I will, and then it'll be in Andy's hands.
I think Andy has it, yeah.
Oh, Andy already has it. This is the IMAP keywords and IMAP and JMAP keywords and mailbox attributes.
Okay, I'm having a hard time remembering. So the one with the inclusive language, I think, is already going to the IESG, or it's out for last call. I can't
Oh,
remember.
actually, I believe this one is actually on the next telechat, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Okay. That's it.
No, I think. Oh yeah, you're right. This one is on the telechat on the 20th.
The one with
This
the
one.
UID, yeah, UID batches. I think I'm waiting on you guys to hand it back to me.
I think there might be,
Okay.
we'll get to it. I think there might be another rev in that one.
Yep.
Okay, thank you on that one, Daniel. I have to get back to my other slides. Oh, yeah, you're up again with the UID batches. Sorry, Daniel.
No worries. Yep, so this is the other one which is submitted for publication, I believe. But yeah, there was a minor change sort of about also allowing servers to go a bit above the limit that was set, but yeah, seemed like everybody was happy with that. So I think we're slowly getting ready to get this out of the door.
Yeah, on this one, Barry kindly did a pretty thorough review, and I think his feedback is very it was a very well done review, and I think a lot of his input should be taken. So I think Danny
Okay.
might probably want to look at that and
Okay,
clarify.
I missed that, but yeah, I will do that.
Yep, it's on the list. And
Cool.
if you, I don't know if you saw or not, Alexi posted a message to the list this morning, and Alexi's getting to the queue.
Hi, sorry to be a pain. I was, but basically, yeah, I'm not super happy with the last change. It's not the end of the world, but I don't think the server should return the data that the client didn't ask for. So I kind of, I think I understand the case of returning less data than than requested, and I accepted that. I think going the other way is the server can also filter. If the server can all, client asked for 500, server can only return 600. The server can filter out the 100 that the client didn't ask for before returning. So I don't think we need this. And it's all Arndt's fault anyway, right? Because
Yeah, it's all Arndt's fault, that's for sure. But I don't particularly, I have strong feelings one way or the other. So maybe you can hash it out with Arndt.
Alexi, could you post some text to the list that you think might be better or that is less offensive to you at least, and let us review
it's
it?
offensive. So I think my preference is just maybe roll back the high limit and make it a hard limit. And in this case, I'm happy to suggest a sentence saying, well, if the server can only do more, it just has to filter it out. The second part was, at the moment, the hard limit is linked to message limit, and I'm not sure why it's that way. But if you roll back this part of the change, this will also go away. So and then I'll be happy again.
Okay, if you could post that to the list, that'd be great.
Okay, I think my message covers both of these points. I just didn't suggest a text. So Daniel, if you can have a quick read.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need any text because I think it's mostly about rolling back the change if Art is not strongly objecting to it. It sounded like he didn't care too strongly about it. So
he's in the queue next. So let's see.
He's in the queue and he's chewing on his fingers here. So, but let me just, this is Barry. Let me quickly say that I agree with Alexei, and I can see an implementation where you may have allocated data structures for a particular number of responses, and getting more than them is not good. You can always throw them away on receipt, but the server can just as well throw them away before it sends them. Right, let's not waste the bandwidth, Alexei says, and I agree with that. So Arndt.
Right, Arndt. we have the message limit extension in order to get hard message limits, and that's what it should do. We generally don't, or we pretty much never have extensions that bind non-implementing codes. And I think that's good. All of our extensions say that software that supports this extension must do this and should do that. This would be a case where an extension said software that doesn't implement must this, must that, which would be ungood. It would be architecturally unsound. However, I'm not strongly opposed because I'd rather have us move towards JMAP anyway, ever more IMAP extensions. Oh, if some of them have one or two architectural warts, what does it matter? We should be moving towards JMAP. Barry?
This is Barry. I don't agree with Arndt's characterization of that. UID batches is specifying what the server response has to be and saying that the server can respond with fewer than requested but can't respond with more than requested is a reasonable limit for this extension that doesn't tie it to message limit. We're saying what UID batches is allowed to do. We're saying UID batches is not allowed to return more than you asked for. That's a fine thing for UID batches to say.
As I recall, the language I objected to was specifically tied to message limits and applied when the client had not enabled, does not use message limit. The number of things that are sent from the server is much less than 500 anyway. It's something like 4, 10.
Could you read that text again? And if you see something that you think is problematic?
Well, but anyway, my opinion remains warts are just warts. Let's move towards JMAP and not care so very much.
Yeah, I don't agree with you, but that's okay. No, about words. In this case, so yeah, I don't fully understand the message limit link because for me, the message limit is going to be like 10,000 messages and the clients typically will ask 500 or 1,000. So of course, the client cannot ask more than message limit. I think that's kind of implied and the server shouldn't return more than message limit. But if the client asks, 750, I think the server should return as many. So
It sounds like we're all on the same page. We just need the text to reflect that. Daniel, do you have any further comments?
Yeah, I'll update it alongside the other feedback.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up is going to be Rick. Would you like the clicker, Rick?
Oh, sure. I'll take it. I only have like 5 slides. Ricardo Cygnus. So this was a document that was a list of suggested IMAP extensions that would be the most effective things to improve the user or operator experience of IMAP above and beyond the core protocol. We talked about this in Dublin, and then it's sort of been poked at a little bit since then to move some things around based on discussion from the list. Here, we're talking about effective extensions, meaning they have a definable benefit to the user or to the operator of the server, and they are actually available in a reasonable but undefined number of implementations. If you implement this, you will get some real benefit from systems actually operating on the internet. and then, right, and so we talk about some of the actual benefits you see: less bandwidth used to synchronize, less time used to synchronize, less user confusion, especially regarding things like half committed states when an error can disrupt what you're doing partway through. This was not intended to be IMAP 4 Rev 3, just to reiterate the discussion we had last time we talked about this. This is not things you must implement to continue being compliant with IMAP per se. It is things that will improve the experience in a particular common use case, a person who is using IMAP for accessing their individual mail and some other cases as well. Right, this is more talking about what we're doing here. We're saying this is for people who are implementing servers either from scratch or making extensions to their existing servers or clients. It's not where we want to say we've got some cool ideas for new extensions, let's throw them in here. They have to already exist. This has been a great argument for some things that have been suggested repeatedly. Some prior art, we've talked about this before. This was the actual suggestions. This is a slide from last time talking about which RFCs we wanted to put in. After the discussion since then, preview was stricken. Everything else, everyone seemed pretty happy to keep in place. Two things are not, one thing is not called out specifically, which is idle. And that goes to a few items that didn't make our initial list. The list of extensions came from a outside of IETF discussion with a number of IMAP programmers. And there are some things that were excluded from our list of do we want to encourage this, based on the idea that, well, actually, everybody we are interacting with already supports them. So I think one thing to talk about is, do we want to put them in anyway? Because everybody already supports them is sort of ephemeral knowledge that is not useful to everybody else who might start from scratch. I see a big thumb up, which I agree with. So those things include idle, literal plus, literal minus, and UID plus. I also want to get a sense of, should we just, even if everything else is good, should we hold on while object ID is bouncing around? We've got object ID partial and the object ID account ID. Maybe we want to be able to get the language into this document, although there's a question of existing implementations. And finally, I wanted to get input on the language of the specification. In Dublin, we talked about, should this actually be an applicability statement? It seemed like that made some people happier. I don't know what has to be done other than tick a box about calling this an applicability statement. So that's it. That's my whole presentation. Any questions? Barry, I see you're up.
Aren't you in the queue, or do you forget to pull yourself out?
Okay. All right. This is Barry. Yes, make it an applicability statement. And I think the only thing there is it becomes a proposed standard, and somewhere in it you say this is an applicability statement, but it's not in the metadata. And the other is that this should be the last of the batch that's in processing, so that you can pick up anything that makes sense in the discussions of that batch.
Yep. Yeah, sounds great.
Good suggestion, Barry. Thank you. Any further comments on this?
Actually, there is one more.
Elliot.
Yeah. Barry, can you say a few more words on why an applicability statement?
This is Barry. The point of the applicability statement is to give you guidance on implementing standards that exist, how to put them together into a coherent implementation. That's exactly what this is doing. It's saying take this set of extensions and bundle them with your IMAP implementation, and you will have a better implementation.
Okay.
So
I have a different understanding of an applicability statement, actually, which applicability statements tend to apply to specific standards, right? So as in this the applicability standard of this standard is as follows. That this is to some extent counting the number of angels on the head of a pin. I don't want to overstate it, right? But this feels a lot more like a profile, actually.
That was also discussed, yeah.
Right, and so there is a risk with profiles, by the way. And the risk with profiles is if this thing is widely accepted, it could be that the other extensions fall by the wayside, and you could end up making it more difficult to introduce new extensions. So be careful with what you ask for.
I believe that this is Barry. I believe the document already says things along that line. That Well, review what's there and suggest changes to the wording if you think it's not clear enough. But it ought to be saying that this is not the definitive list. This is just, we recommend if you're implementing IMAP, put at least these in. And if the wording is not good, then suggest alternative.
Elliot, are you suggesting informational or are you suggesting something else?
I'm suggesting that oftentimes when we say the minimum of something, people will often, no matter what you say, will often interpret it as the maximum of something. So just, there's a risk of publishing this in this form at all.
Elliot, as a counterpoint, we've done lemonade profile in the past, and this didn't happen. So, I mean, obviously, past performance is not predictor of the future performance, but it's just, yeah, I think I hear you, but personally, I'm not super concerned about this.
Yeah, I did one last remark, which is not a big deal, which is just one thing that is useful to make clear that this reflects actual art is a useful set of endorsements from actual existing implementations. Say, yes, we believe as a server, we believe this is a useful set of extensions. We would like clients who've implemented it. So getting a place to put endorsements of this or co-authorship on the document is probably useful for its credibility in the future. That's secondary to finishing the document.
Yep. Thank you, Rick. Hans-Jorg, you're up. I was hoping you'd show up before your time slot. Clicker should be active for you.
All right, thanks. So let's see it. All right, can everybody hear me? It's a little bit, okay, doesn't sound like that. Good afternoon. This is a document, the so-called Personal Data Portability Archive. We have been last talking about this, I think, in Bangkok, and didn't give you an update on this in Madrid because we were at that time not too much progressing it. But ever since then, Lisa and Alexei, who are my two co-authors here, we have been regularly calling together to make some progress on the document. And this is just a short update for you and maybe asking for some input or feedback. At the moment, it's probably not yet ready for you to, or in a state where we could say, use it or implement it already, but maybe giving some feedback along the way would be awesome. Sorry. So what is this? So the idea is here to have basically a format of data which users can persist and can retrieve from a provider in order to get a copy of the data, probably upload it somewhere else. But you see in the goals below, there are some related cases as well, like you want to do that for backup, for an export, or even move it to another provider. Some of you might be aware of things like Google Takeout, for instance. So there are some proprietary things that do something like that. And we thought about it would be a good idea to basically have an open format here, which would work for many users and many use cases. Obviously, in particularly for mail, there is existing things like, obviously MAILMAINT format as a container for individual items, and also things like MailDear and Mbox. But these, besides, they are not perfectly standardized either. I think just for Mbox, there is an RFC. They are not really something an end user can deal with. And the idea here is that probably also other tool vendors will adopt it and help you use that for import or give you even tools to work with that offline in a way. So the general idea, what we also thought about what to include inside. So not just email, but also everything you might have in your GroupFair account. And that was one of the initial ideas here, one could also reuse the new JMAP stuff more easily. So that we would not base it necessarily on CARTAF, CALDAF, and these things. All right. Mauro is in the queue. I'm not sure if this is an urgent question, Mauro. I mean, the presentation is short. Maybe we can take it at the end. Okay.
Yeah, it is fine. No, not important.
All right. So here is a basic idea how it's probably supposed to look like. So the idea is that in the end, you might get one kind of an archive file, a dump from your provider. But that might also work, of course, if it's like extracted on your local system. And this file might consist of certain like subfolders for certain types of data. And within the subfolders, you might have additional subfolders, obviously, if you have multiple mail folders, for instance, stuff like that. And basically, you have then, or our idea is to have individual files for the actual item data, like you see here, the EML files or JS contact JSON files or JS calendar files underneath. And then there is per folder a metadata file with additional metadata. Like in email, you would need something like UIDs and these kind of things. Plus, there is a global index file, which is at the moment called index.json, and which is very roughly described here. There is more details or suggestions for actual properties in the draft. They are certainly preliminary, but it would be good if you look at it and maybe provide some feedback and other suggestions. What kind of data is there? So roughly, it's currently separated into data which is describing or properties of the archive itself, properties of the data set within the archive, and then properties about the data source, like the, let's say, the service where you exported it from, and these kind of things. So then there's also an initial suggestion for that folder JSON, which is currently very much inspired by email-related properties. So we still need to do some work to make it workable and adapted also for other types of data like contacts or calendar things. But again, this I think is already also in some shape where people can look at it and give actual feedback on. I won't go too much detail on the data formats. JS contact, JS calendar, I noted. So there might be some co-evolution in the meantime, like with file node draft, which we will include at some time. That's currently not yet done. And yeah, finally, there is some questions which we as the authors didn't also yet fully made our mind up. And which are probably also not super urgent, but it might be helpful if somebody here in the room has an idea. So interestingly, it's far from trivial if you dig into the idea of these container formats, like what could be good candidates for like zipping or putting together these kind of files. I mean, there's obvious candidates like tar or gzip and so on, but all of these have very different properties. And we are not yet sure about the practicalities of all these formats. And so if anybody ever encountered, a design problem here in this space already and has some extensive experience, I think that would be very helpful for us to consider. And the second aspect is what to do with encryption. I mean, we could ignore it at all, but I mean, obviously there are services, for instance, mail services, which are encrypt only and so on. And the question is a little bit to what extent. It's certainly a cross-cutting concern, but it might affect various aspects of it. It might affect encryption of the whole export, which some people might want to do for some reasons, but there might also be individual items considered. So we didn't yet think too deeply about it, but if anybody has a use case here or an idea, feel free to put this into the room and we will be happy to deal with it in the further progress of the draft. That's it so far. And the queue is growing. Mauro, I think you can start, I would say.
Hi,
Yep.
Mauro General here. Yeah, no, just a few comments because last time we talked about this extension was before it expired. I'm planning to implement this, even if it's not ready, because I need to do something like that. I just wanted to make some comments about the calendar and contacts part. That after implementing the JS calendar, iCalendar, and JS contact vCard conversions, I saw all the scenarios where you can lose data in that conversion. So some people, some servers that are only CalDAV might not want to export the data to such format. However, JS Calendar and JS Contact have these, they have a component that allows you to export the contact or calendar event as a JCal that will keep in JSON. It will represent as is the iCalendar or vCard entry. So what I was going to suggest is that the specification should include like a setting that where the server because it's not completely valid a JS calendar that only has an iCal component. So it should allow that for servers that do not want to use JS calendar as a or JS contact as a transport. I think that is important because even though bcard and JS calendar are broken, I think it should be an option. And the second comment was it would be nice to extend also JMAP to have a checkout method, an import. Other methods for importing and exporting an entire account. Those were the main comments.
Just for clarification, because the audio is a little bit difficult for me here up front. The last one was you say like a method for exporting, right? Like an JMAP API method, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That would be nice. Yeah.
Right. So we did discuss that. So that probably will be rather a different draft at some point. I'm probably also up to somebody like the chair of the JMAP working group or so. But yeah, so certainly that's also on our mind and makes total sense. Yeah.
Okay, great. That's it. I will send any other comments on the list.
Thank you, Mar. Barry?
This is Barry Lieba. I was looking at the transcript and seeing JC and JS, and I'm thinking Bach. JC Bach and JS Bach. Anyway, that's not what I got up here to say. What's not clear to me from the presentation is whether you're just talking about doing an export or archive thing, or whether there's some server-to-server communication protocol involved here, or what. Can you just clarify that?
So I don't know if somebody wants, Lisa, if you want to step in, because you might have more opinionated.
I think right now we're not defining any protocol bindings. This is Lisa Dussault, by the way, at the mic. Including export bindings to IMAP or to JMAP or to CalDAV. Those would all be great things. So would a server-to-server transport. But focusing on the format first is useful anyways, because even without any protocol bindings, somebody can still click on a link as soon as their server supports this. So I would love to get the format solid and agreed upon, and then work on bindings. And I do think the server-to-server stuff would be a good move. Even without server-to-server, I mean, some people are motivated enough to drag something over on a periodic basis to sync their contacts or something that is currently virtually not possible given how bad one-way sync is with contacts out there right now, or to write a little script to do that. And so, yeah, I'd like to get this done first, and then I will personally continue to work on the protocol bindings and server-to-server stuff.
Okay, thanks. Then let me strongly encourage you not to leave encryption for too late in the process, because even if you're just doing an export, encrypting data at rest is a good thing to do. Make sure that you keep that in mind at every step of the design of this.
Very question. So I think for us is, does encryption need to be part of the format, or is it a security consideration? So we will talk about it no matter what, but. Okay, so Barry said it should be part of security consideration. Okay, fine.
Ben, go ahead.
My first question was the same that Mauro and Barry already said. Is then going to be an API, but your approach is sound to first set the data format and then think about APIs. One way to do an API is also to have a local application. I would be happy to support this in Parula, for example, as a local application, and there would need to be an API that another application can trigger, give me the data now. That would be some other way, but it's good to think about that later. The other thing I wanted to mention was incremental backups. I think that's going to be very important, especially when they talk about mail. And you ask about the container formats. I'm not an expert, but I think tar gzip is not good in addition and removal for incremental, because the tar is basically one blob, which is then later gzipped as an entirety, whereas I think zip has this already in the format that you can add and remove files easily. So I think that would be more appropriate, but it's better to double check. And you in the folder JSON, in the slide, you said that folder JSON is going to reference the individual emails. And that's going to be a problem because then you have a single file that's going to be read and write all the time. I would wanted to make you consider maybe not reference the individual emails in folder JSON, but rely on the file system or the container format to just list the contents of the directory. That would remove some deadlocks that can happen in operation when you add and remove things at the same time.
So you're done, right? Very short, thank you for your comments. Very short one to the first one. So incremental backup is something which you will see being considered in the draft. I didn't mention it here live on microphone yet. Currently, the idea is not necessarily to update the existing files, since you're absolutely right, that would be one of the properties which would make differences between the different archive formats. But since this is also something to become something pulled from a server, so you might have a service and you might have the file locally, which you initially downloaded, we more thought like an incremental archive in terms of getting, you know, additional files which tell you changes that have been happened in the past.
Mm.
And then you don't have that update problem on the archive file at least. Yeah.
Okay, Baran, you're up next.
I'll answer the tar gzip thing first because I have a lot of expertise in this. The fastmail backup format is concatenated gzip to tar files. You can absolutely concatenate tar files together and gzip them separately, but it's not a lovely format to work with. You can only go on the boundaries of where the tarring and gzipping happened. I think zip is a good format because a lot of other file formats already zip, and so it's quite well understood. There are certainly file name considerations in both formats, but tar has a 100-character limit unless you're using extended tars, which things are weird for. It doesn't really matter. Almost all of this doesn't really matter as long as it's well-defined and you can find a library that does it. I don't care about that. I wanted to talk about the encryption and composability stuff. I think it does make sense to allow for an encrypted part and a non-encrypted part in the format. And if you design the format to allow multiple sub parts inside a single file, you could have encrypted and non-encrypted parts inside the same file with an indication that this is an encrypted part and still be able to get some of the data out of the file that's not encrypted, which I think is more useful. And also that format would allow you to combine together multiple partial extracts as a single extract without having to do anything more than just stick them inside the container as separate dumps. And so I think that level of composability inside your container format will give some good flexibility later.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brown. Pete?
Bend over, Pete. The only, and I mentioned in the chat, the only thing that concerns me is really the calendar stuff. Bundling up and taking in a suitcase, mail and contacts is pretty straightforward. The calendar stuff, because of invites, particularly invites that go cross servers or within servers, is still a mess. I've never seen a good implementation of it. And I happen to have gone through 2 or 3 migrates in recent years, and they've all turned out horribly. Unless you're planning on diving down into solving all of those problems, I think you're asking for trouble adding that to this. I would love you to solve all those problems. That would be great, but it really is quite a pain in the butt.
Calendar migration enthusiast here. I'm very happy to discuss it with you. Probably not yet right on the spot.
Neil, you're up.
Hello. I'll just start actually with the calendar thing just because that was there. That migration should work okay, but the main problem would be knowing you have to, for the invitation stuff to work, you have to know exactly which addresses are you, which ones in this, which email address in this vCalendar file should be considered this user as opposed to someone else. And that's, and if you don't migrate that, then yes, things would go horribly wrong. But if you're keeping the same email address at both services, then that should work fine. Anyway, that wasn't what I was going to say. I want to say 2 things. Firstly, I support that this should just be focusing on the format, not on API bindings. I think that's a separate thing, and in many cases, it will just be a proprietary download an export file. It's it's not that exciting, or import as so it would also be nice if this had its own file extension / media type, so that you download it and then tools know how to open this thing, know what it is, and just open it. And then the final thing was email data in particular tends to be really large. Contacts and calendars, even when people have quite large ones, are actually not that much data, but email data can be gigabytes and gigabytes. And downloading and re-uploading that tends to be just a nightmare, just because most people's domestic connections are still not great at uploading, especially single files that are multi-gigabyte. And in some cases, like if you have 30 gigabytes of mail, almost no one can actually upload a 30 gigabyte file successfully, which makes it very hard. People come to us with their exports from other places, and it's very hard to actually import them. Server to server works much better, but for that, honestly, IMAP and whatever just works fine. That's what we do at the moment. We just because then we don't have to do it in one big thing. We suck in UID by UID and can resume, etc. I'm not sure I have a solution here. I'm just saying that there's problems due to the size of this data when you're trying to actually use it.
Hopefully HDB BIS will be helping us with that with the resumable upload draft.
Yeah, and
I guess the question is, do you have to upload it all before it's useful to start importing it, or can you import it as it's uploading? That might be related to the file format.
But in any case, I mean, I think just if you think about the export, I mean, there is no other way. If you want to have an export of your data from the provider, I mean, it's the size it has. First of all, I mean, there's no way we can work around that in a way. There was some idea of probably having something like you'll find it in the index.json, some kind of a filter thing where you might be able to say, okay, skip all files with a certain size or something like that.
Probably what would be much more successful is if your upload tool can decompress it and upload file by file rather than having to upload just a single massive blob, because that's much easier to resume. You can even like import the data as it gets there. That maybe this is just an implementation consideration, but
all right,
yeah. It's good.
Okay, Alexei.
Thank you for this is all great input. I think people seem to be excited for us to continue working on this. So my question is actually for the chairs. There was a kind of half-done adoption call. So where do you think we go from this? Well,
I was
there was
under
an
pressure.
email and nobody replied to it. So
I will reissue the call.
So okay, thank you.
Lisa, did you want to step up quickly? Okay, thank you all. Next up is going to be Arndt. No, PDP.
Cool. Does everyone know, or do I have to repeat any of this? No. This is about two drafts, the ones that describe Unicode addresses largely, and then surrounding spec and a smaller one. May I have the clicker? Stricter document and less restrictive document, simpler to implement. The simpler document is really only there for security and feel-good implementation. Jiankang, Daniel, and some others ganged up on me since Madrid and made me, yes, they were, made me write a set of tests. That was horrible, but very useful. Well, it made me understand why it was so difficult to implement. It seemed simple from the words I had written. It actually was not simple, and writing tests was like that as well. Anyway, after all that, I settled on using Precise for pretty much everything where that or the LGR, or UAX 31 were the three alternatives. Precis still has its problems. Do I have Alexei here? Precis is a little low on implementations, which complicates my two implementation requirements. There were some open issues in Madrid after talking to some people and doing a bit of writing. I made up my mind on all three of them. From bottom to top, some of the top level domains now allow mixing directions. So you can have something like an email address like Hebrew first name dot Latin last name at Hebrew domain dot Latin top level domain. Yeah. Given that two top level domains have this in spec, I found it a little difficult to just say not possible, but it isn't possible. That kind of thing is trouble for people. The current specification says not doable, and that's how I want to leave it. And if that means that you can't have an email address in such a domain, well, hard luck.
Just a quick clarification here.
Yep.
You're, when you talk about mixed left to right and right to left, you're talking about within a name, but not within a label. So each label still has to be all left to right or all right to left, right?
Or complicated. In a label, this gets into DNS stuff. Top level domains have to be single direction.
Right.
Secondary domains in a public top level domain have to be single direction, except for .com, which has an old database. That will eventually change, I assume. If you want to do something really nasty with your own third level domains within your domain, you can do whatever you want. And of course, in your local part, you can do whatever you want. So I simply say, don't want to allow mixing like that. It's too much trouble. Next up, some writing systems use accents, some others don't. Unicode is set up in such a way that it's difficult to write code and detect whether an accent is being used in an incomprehensible way here. You can have an what's it? I forget what they're called in English. Umlaut, the German ones, and you can stick them. Diaresis. Yep, and you can stick that on top of your Cyrillic letters where they'll look strange to people. Wikipedia has a heavy metal band from Russia that actually does that. Thing is that if you use current day code, it's really difficult to tell whether this diaresis is used for a language where that's used or not. So I say, ignore that, allow it wherever. It shouldn't be a problem. In particular, it shouldn't be a security problem because public domains have restrictions that keep it from being usable as an attack vector. So I think this is RFC 1925.4. You can always move a problem to a different part of the architecture. And the top one, length limits. Some of the address verification services on the net have length limits for local parts, which we don't really accept. That 5322 has a limit of 64 bytes. Not many people enforce that. And I know that some of the address verification services use 50. But I want to apply the ostrich algorithm here as well and just mention the 64. The reason for having a limit is that there are evil bots on the web that try and sign up extremely long email addresses. People who accept email addresses on the web tend to want to reject those. Anyway, those are 3 open issues that I have opinions on. I'll write that as said unless someone massively disagrees right now.
John, do you want to chime in here?
Oh, shit.
John Clinton first.
Yeah. I'm troubled by this list of ignore things in what is intended to be an IETF spec. It's especially troubling because one of the things you said is true of contracted parties, plus or minus COM, but not necessarily true of CCTLDs. Ignore that is a little bit problematic. If the spec says this only applies to contracted parties, that would be fine. But then I'm going to oppose the IETF having anything to do with it because documents which strictly apply to contracted parties are an ICANN problem. So I think you need to look carefully at where the boundaries are here, and hand waving about ignoring that seems to me to be problematic.
I think what you're saying is pretty much why I spent so much time walking the corridor thinking about this. Both of the top level domains that accept this are in fact CCTLDs. I happen to know that one of those CCLDs has precisely one mixed domain registered, and that is a test domain. The other one, I have not been able to get in contact with them to ask whether it actually is used. I have not been able to find an email address that uses this or a domain that uses this. Common Crawl, for example, doesn't have any. But there are 2 CCTLDs that did choose to allow it. And that on principle, well, I chose eventually to want to disregard that, but only after several months of dithering, because it's to me it's a hard choice.
Well, but it'd be very different to say no one we could find is doing this, and it doesn't seem to either necessary or a good idea. That's different from ignore.
Okay. Yep.
So all I'm asking is you be a little bit more explicit.
Excellent. Thanks. I'll add wording to that effect.
John Levine.
John Levine. I have some sort of miscellaneous thoughts. The 64-byte length limit has to be in there because I know of actual production mail servers that don't allow, that don't work if the local part is longer. They have fixed size buffers, and it's probably even worth a note that 64 bytes is in a Unicode address is invariably considerably less than 64 code points. Let's see, two other things. For normalization, the Precy-doc recommends but does not require NFC. I'm wondering whether we should require NFC. I just
Doesn't
looked.
Precis
I just looked. I just
simply
looked.
use NFC for comparison?
The Prissy RFC says NFC is recommended, but it doesn't say that it's required.
Okay, then
Unless
think
somebody
it
can come
should
up with a good
say-
reason that there is some plausible reason why you might want to allow something that isn't NFC. I think we should just say it's,
No.
it's
NFC.
Yeah.
My document doesn't say that because I must have misread 8264. I thought it was in 8264.
It's possible I misread it too, but
Mm.
I was just grepping. That's what I found. And one last thing to make everybody's life more miserable. Many mail systems allow suffixes, a plus sign and a suffix, and this doesn't allow that. I'm wondering, is that a deliberate omission? Is it an accidental omission? Is it something we should think about?
Right. I know why it is, but perhaps it's more true to say that it's an omission. My interoperable addresses draft is for people who don't have sub-addresses. Sub-addresses is something that's added after you provision an address.
Not really. I mean,
Yeah, well, you get your address and then you can create sub-addresses yourself.
That is typically that's the way it's implemented, but that's not what
Right.
like from the point of
Yep.
53, 21, and 22. Those are just addresses that happen to contain
agree.
plus signs. Yeah,
Can
I
you
think
suggest
it's
wording?
probably worth saying one way or the other that we know what a plus address is and we do allow it or we don't allow it.
Mm.
And my plus addresses have hyphens, so I'm neutral on this one.
Thank you, John. Alexi, you're up.
I probably maybe stating its obvious thing or it just recurred in my head again. This document is updating that email core AS recommendations. So my personal take is I would like to get email core AS done and then concentrate on this, make sure that it doesn't break anything. Or if we choose to do different recommendations, then it will update the other document once it's published. But so just a kind of warning.
Yeah, thank you.
That we should...
I had made a note to myself to say something similar, but I'd forgotten. So thank you for that. The other thing I noticed in this draft when I read it this morning was we were referencing the what working group syntax, and we made a conscious decision to not reference that in the email core AS. So we'll have to possibly revisit that. But I agree with Lexi. Let's finish.
Revisit that where?
We'll decide if we want to actually reference it or point back to what we put in the AS as the suggested grammar. But I agree. Let's finish the AS first and then go with this. Other than that, where do you think we are in this beyond the open issues?
I want to do an actual implementation myself because writing the tests revealed buried treasure. And I'm not going to trust it until I have a complete implementation. I have some of one now. When two implementations exist, I would like to do working group last call, but not IETF last call. That would have, I agree that should wait. So we don't have any accidental discrepancies with the email core AS.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Do you have a second implementer in mind at this point?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, they bothered me about tests. I found it difficult to implement.
Okay, excellent. So we might have some
I have a
possible
third implementer as well.
So we may have some possible churn as you implement, but otherwise we're looking pretty good at this point. Okay, great. Thank you, Arndt. Next on the agenda, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Going one step, going back to PDB archive. No, it's okay. Alexia mentioned something about a call for adoption. I looked. We did one that ended in July. We just never moved it to the new state, and we never got a 0.0 version. So we can consider that. Go ahead.
If you declare it adopted,
He
this
did
will
al-
make at least this editor very happy. So I
He
think-
did already. We just never pushed the buttons. So
Would you like
proceed.
to push the buttons and then we'll?
I'm going to see if they've stopped that. Hold on. Watch this.
Okay. Next, Neil, do you want to give a quick update on OAuth profile?
Sure. I haven't done any slides because there isn't a huge amount to say on this one. I think it's not really changed since last time because I think it is basically ready. What we need at this point is implementation experience to make sure we haven't missed anything. We have implemented it at Fastmail, I believe, at this point. But we'll, so if anyone would like to test it with us, please let me know and let's do that. Otherwise, yeah, I think once we have another implementation or at least some good testing of the client with the server, we can probably progress this to last call. If anyone has any other outstanding issues on that, let me know. But I think it probably doesn't need to wait for the auto discovery because it's independent enough of that as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw, but I did send an email to the OAuth chairs asking them to review, which was part of our
I did.
agreement.
Yeah, that's great.
Over.
So let's see what they say on that as well.
Yeah, I have not heard
Thanks.
back, but I will press them to try to get somebody to look at it. All right, thank you, Neil. Next, Ben, you want to give us an update on the legacy autoconfig?
Sure. Same as Neil, I don't have slides. I just made an update of the document. Murray had lots of very good comments on it, so they should all be addressed now or have a reason not to be addressed. And so this document is now again in a state where it can be re-reviewed. The only thing I haven't done is the feedback to make an XML schema. I've tried to do that, but I have not found a way to do a schema which is allowing undefined elements and attributes, which is very important for forward compatibility. I've hit a roadblock there, so if there's anybody which has experience with XML schema can help me with this. But otherwise, the current draft is the good one.
I saw it. I'll take another run at reviewing it. I think I'm going to hold a shepherding on this one. So that's I'm next, but everybody else is free to look at it as well.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yep, thank you, Ben. Next is Daniel with the new autoconfig, currently called PAC, but there's a proposal to change this to Guac. I'll let Rick. Let me get you control. Actually, Danny, do you want to control the slides yourself, or would you like me to drive? Oh, did he mute himself?
Were you talking to me? Who did you talk to?
What's that, Ben?
I didn't hear what you said. Can you repeat?
I was asking Daniel if he had muted himself and he can't hear us. Oh, can I unmute Daniel? I don't think I can force his mic on. Yeah, exactly.
I think my audio is working finally. Anyway, sorry. Yes.
I've given you control of the slide.
Cool. I'll see if that works. There's been a lot of good discussion on the mailing list about this, but I'll quickly try to go through this and give a quick overview over what we're trying to do. So the problem is, as hopefully everybody knows, setting up your email, calendar, contacts, and so forth clients is difficult. It's both error prone even when you know what you're doing, and if you are not technically skilled, it's extremely difficult and it's frustrating and time consuming, both for users, but lots of support tickets. So we're trying to solve this by automating it. And I think it's worth saying that the goal is not to build something that solves all problems for everybody, but build something that solves things for almost everybody. So we're sort of accepting that it's not going to work for all configurations, but sort of trying to find a good sort of middle way, middle ground. Anyway, high-level flow of how this is currently thought to work is that the user enters their email address. We take the domain of that and look up a well-known URI on that. There is a fallback path for using MX servers for that. Then the client will validate that configuration by getting a digest over DNS. Then the client sort of has to choose which servers the client is actually interested in. Might be a client that just wants to do calendaring, or a client that has JMAP support or not, and those kind of things. So it's kind of connects to those servers and kind of checks, is this something that the client wants to connect to, can connect to, so on and so forth. Part of that is also selecting the authentication method. It's basically OAuth versus password. And then finally, the client kind of shows to the user, hey, I can connect to this. This is the domain name. And then the client will validate the credentials before storing the setup and sort of being done with everything. So trying to rush through this. I hope it's not too fast and not too slow. Anyway, a bit more detail on this. So the well-known URI is just this kind of thing. There's a prefix, domain name, and then we register some well-known thing. It's a JSON resource. There were a lot of concerns about the security aspects of that. The reason we want HTTP and HTTP only is because of TLS. That gives us some traceability if there's some funky stuff going on with certificates. But in addition to that, we will also, the current design is to also get a DNS text resource that has a digest of that JSON file. And moving along, the fallback, I could already see some people being very happy about that. So if the domain supports MTA STS, we will then allow a fallback by using the MX records, the highest priority MX records, of which there can be multiple. We construct well-known URIs based on those, do the same validation as we did before over DNS with a digest. And if there were multiple highest priority MX hosts, all of those have to return a resource and have to all be bitwise identical. Yeah, there was lots of security discussion around that, but that's sort of where we ended right now. The JSON looks somewhat like this. The spec obviously has a bit more detail, but it's a sort of list of protocols and sort of where they live. Authentication does this thing support OAuth, and does it support password, or both? And then you can also put some provider info in there, name and some icons and stuff. Moving along. So the protocol selection, this obviously sort of depends a lot on sort of what the provider supports and what the client supports, and sort of getting those things to line up. The client may want to do JMAP, but then the provider only has IMAP and SNTP, or it's the other way around, those kind of things. The way it works is that the client sort of picks the things that it thinks it's interesting and actually connects to them. It verifies TLS. We require, if I recall correctly, the spec requires TLS 1.2, and everything has to be TLS 1.2 or better, might even be 1.3. As part of that, the client then checks which authentication methods are supported. Yeah, and for HTTP, that sort of works through the www authenticate headers, and for the text protocols, it's just basically a SSL capabilities. I think there's an example here. Yeah, so IMAP, you get your capabilities, SMTP, or 250 auth, and HTTP, it's you basically send an unauthorized request and look at the response. And from that, the client can sort of see what do the various servers that it's interested in support. OAuth, that's the thing that Neil just talked about. There is basically a breadcrumb in the configuration that lets you then use that other thing that Neil talked about and get all the OAuth magic working. For password-based, there was a bit of discussion. I think we landed on only allowing full email addresses. Yep, that's all about that. Security considerations. It's important to display the server host names to the user. There's particularly a thing about sort of if people mistype their email address and got the domain wrong, and sort of people squatting on those domains. TLS validation, all connections that are used during auto configuration have to have valid certificates. The client must not allow any overrides, and all things that are used for configuration retrieval, so the downloading the JSON, have to be TLS 1.3 or better. If you want self-signed certificates or those kind of things, you just have to do a manual configuration. Yeah, I think that was almost it. Last slide. This is the name. Happy to rename it if that makes people happy. And those were the words.
DKG, comments, questions?
Hi, thank you for all this work. This is like super useful to have. I am struggling with this fallback question where you said if it's hosted in multiple places, what are the, they must all be bitwise identical. So I wanted to ask you, A, what do you do if they're not bitwise identical? And B, what do you do if you are unable to retrieve one of the fallback mechanisms? And how does that play out in terms of different clients getting different answers?
Oh, shoot. Daniel's putting his hand up now.
If you want to just answer that in the chat also, that's totally fine by me. I'm not trying to, workshop it at the mic line. I just am realizing that we're dealing with this in other contexts too. Oh, you're back.
No, he's back.
But I don't hear your audio.
I can only hear when my mic is unmuted, which is kind of unfortunate. Anyway, the spec goes into some details about like everything has to be bitwise identical, but it's basically, the worry is that if you MX fallback, you have multiple highest priority, and then, but you're like, whatever, we'll just put the config on one. Then somebody could try to squat on one of the other ones. And so we're just like, you have to put it on all. Like if you have multiple highest priority, you need to put it on all. And if you can't do that, then MX fallback is just not going to work, because otherwise we just can't guarantee that things work the way they should.
Right. So I get that that you want all, like that the right way to deploy it is the same thing in all the places where the client might do its fallback queries, right? Because there's the primary query, and then there's the MX fallback queries. The MX fallback queries might have more than one way that they get resolved. And my understanding is you want bitwise identical across the entire suite of them, the N+1. Yeah. And so my question for you is, what do you do? So we know what the right way to deploy it is, but I'm interested in the questions of what happens when that's not the right, when it isn't deployed the right way. What happens to the clients in that case? Are we saying that the clients must reject all configuration if they manage to fetch two and find them different? Yes. Are we saying they must try to fetch as many ones as possible, or they can find one that works? And why wouldn't I just give up after I found one that works?
because you don't know if that one is one that somebody is squatting on. So if you do the main one where you don't do the MX fallback and that works, you pick that one. If you pick that and the digest doesn't match, you give up completely. But if there is no, you can't reach the server and you kind of know, okay, it doesn't exist, then you can do the MX fallback. And if you do the MX fallback, there are multiple highest priority. All of them have to give you the same valid.
So you have to get it from all of them. So if you're in MX fallback mode, you have to get it from all the MX fallback, from all of the highest priority MXs. And if any of them does not resolve, or any of them yields a different bitwise value than the other, then we consider the whole MX fallback itself to have failed.
Exactly. That's, yeah. It's unfortunate, but otherwise it's just the kind of worms of security holes.
Right. Okay, so there still are ways that two different clients could get the same thing, right? Like if one of them has a network failure to their primary resource and decides to do MX fallbacks, and all the MX fallbacks are configured with a different configuration, they could get a different thing, and there would be no visibility to the server that something was amiss. Do we have any like reporting if there's a failure that something's gone wrong?
There is no reporting. There is some text, I forget the details, about how the primary method is allowed to fail. I'm pretty sure, although I could be wrong, that the text says that if you get some JSON and it doesn't match the digest that you're also able to get, then you must give up on the domain entirely.
Okay.
But I'm not entirely sure. I would have to read it again.
Yeah, I feel like there might be still some holes in this.
Probably.
And I would love it if we didn't have to have a fallback at all, but I don't know how to do that right here. So thank you for working on it.
Neil.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about the digest. This was brought up on the list. Offering 3 different hashing algorithms seems needless complexity to me. I would like to see us just choose probably SHA-256 and say that is it. If that becomes insecure to the point that then we'll need to revise like a new version of the spec. But I think adding options is a mistake if we can avoid it.
I don't have any strong opinions about that. Like either way, I'm fine with just 256. I'm fine with multiple.
Yeah, the more different options there are, the more chance there is for people to implement it incorrectly and for errors to come out. So unless there's a really good reason to have it, I think generally the trend in recently has been to pick one, and if it becomes insecure, bump the whole protocol. Don't just try and give algorithm flexibility within a protocol.
Yeah, we can leave that up to the group to decide, but if we do have options, we're probably going to have one mandatory to implement for interoperability purposes. Arndt.
I rather agree with Neil. Arndt, yes. How well is the fallback justified at all? The whole fallback seems to me to be a little poorly justified additional complexity. It makes the whole thing rather harder to implement. I don't really understand how well justified that is.
Daniel, if you want, I can answer that if you prefer.
Fun issue.
Sure. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, there are pros and cons. I don't have any strong feelings about it.
So aren't you talking about the MX fallback? Is that correct?
That's right.
Yes, because that's the only
any
way.
Fallback at all.
Right. So in practice, this is the only way the autoconfig works at all, because I think about 90% of the domains resolve via the MX fallback, and 5 to 10% resolve directly. So it helps with Google, of course, can have their own one, but if you have your own company domain, which you're hosting at Microsoft or at Fastmail or wherever, very often you won't have this relevant DNS entries. And the MX fallback allows the provider to set the correct records, and it doesn't require the specific company domain to have the right records.
Right.
And in practice, that means the difference between 90% and 10%.
So basically, the fallback is that which allows the mechanism to jump from no deployment to nearly 100% deployment fairly quickly. I am persuaded.
That was the idea. Sorry for jumping in. I'm not sure whether that still holds with the extra requirements that have been added for MTA, STS, and stuff, because that requires custom DNS for each domain as well to set that up, I think. I'll have to think about it more, but yeah, that's my concern.
Brown.
I just want to point out to everyone involved here that the alternative here is not some super secure system. The alternative is that someone asks their AI to tell them what the MX servers are, and the AI pulls some bullshit that it collected from somewhere randomly on the internet. Even unsecured MX lookups are significantly more secure than a human being. And so our alternative risk profile here is a human being reading stuff and transcribing it. It is, I think even an MX lookup is significantly safer than that. Even if sometimes it falls back to the MX and sometimes it doesn't, that attack vector is still much harder for somebody to attack than attacking a random human being's understanding of things.
Thank you, Bron.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I agree, Bron. The problem that we're facing as a client is that if you say, hey, I'm Bron at Fastmail, and then was like, hey, here's your domains, and then we get it wrong, then we are the ones sort of at fault. Like, we directed all your traffic to some server. If you ask the AI, you have to blame the AI, and we don't want to be at fault for sort of being the insecure link in the chain. So that's why we want this to be secure. If it then doesn't work, then you can go and ask your AI, but then we're out of the business of that. So that's sort of, I mean, it's a bit exaggerated, but that's sort of why we want this. Like, we're not going to use it unless it's sort of, yeah, bolts and suspenders.
Daniel, this is kind of a couple quick questions. When I read it this morning, the document is currently informational. Did we want to leave that, or is that an artifact of something else? My understanding is we wanted to take the standard track, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a copy paste mistake.
Okay. Other question, does your employer or you or anybody that you're aware of have plans to implement this relatively soon?
Depends on what soon is, but yeah.
Well, I didn't mean, you know, this weekend, but within the next 6 months, year, something like that.
Yes, probably probably in the next 2 months, I plan to implement it, or 3 months, I don't know.
Thanks, Merle. I just wanted to make sure we've got something in flight so we can churn on this to make sure we get it right before we take it the last call. Daniel, do you have another comment? DKG, sorry.
Yeah, Daniel's fine. There are lots of Daniels, so maybe DKG is better just for disambiguation.
Yeah, that was my point.
I was just noting that this does use this weird left-hand label as a host name, not as just the TXT record. The UA auto config thing. And that's a dangerous label, which means that people have to reserve those labels and make sure that they don't get registered if they do domain name, you know, if they allow subdomain registration. And that's kind of a drag. I've got a draft that I think is currently expired that has a list of the dangerous labels like that. I appreciate that the text record appears to put some sort of check via SHA-256 or whatever. But it's a bummer to add dangerous labels. So I'm going to add this to my dangerous labels draft and unexpire it. But just as a heads up, if anybody's building stuff that has more dangerous labels, just like MTASTS or this, I would like to know about it. It would be nice to have a place where those things can be registered, so people know how to restrict their subdomain policies.
Cool. Thanks, TKG. Ben?
In directs to Daniel, the autoconfig is already being used and deployed. Maybe this is a good reason what he just said, to just use the autoconfig name that's already being used for the legacy autoconfig, to just reuse the same label so that we don't introduce a new one.
Thanks, Ben. I'll follow up with you offline.
Okay, one other question for the room. Prior to the meeting, we received a review from IANA about the draft. The draft currently has a registry of protocol names, and IANA asked us if we wanted to create our own a new grouping or reuse an existing registry. I looked this morning, and the question is probably mostly for the more experienced IETFers. Do we want to try to reuse the current service name registry as the tokens for the protocols, or do you want to create something fresh? Just putting the question out there now. We certainly do not have to decide now, but something to ponder. Alexi might have an opinion.
No, I don't. But is this just a list of like SMTP, IMAP, JMAP thing?
Yeah, the current draft list, SMTP, IMAP, JMAP, WebDAV, CalDAV. All of those are in the service name registry in one form or another, but there's things like CalDAV and CalDAV-S. And we really want people to use HTTPS for CalDAV, but who's really going to type in CalDAV-S?
I think my initial preference, even if we create our own registry, they better be names from service name registry, so like a subset. Okay. So I would rather not, have alternate,
I believe
different spellings and stuff unless we really have to for some reason. So
I believe IANA's email went to our list, so if you wouldn't mind responding to that with your thoughts, that'd be great.
Let's collectively think about this and think about how likely this is to be extended and all that. So,
Rick, did you have
It's tripping over my feet. Yeah, this is Rick. I think that to Alexi's point, I'm not worried about anybody having to type in CalDAV-S, just like I'm not worried about anybody getting the brace matching right in this file. Like that's a programming problem. They should do that correctly. I think the real issue is with that registry, everything that we want to do right now is on there. I can imagine very easily this standard should be expanded into the future for more authentication or access to more systems. And a big question to consider is, to what extent can we trust that registry will be the right place to put those names? So we might want a different registry, and like Alexi says, when possible, choose a name based on the name there, but to be investigated, I think.
Yep, thank you. Ron, did you have another thought, or are you still lurking?
My thought was that I think it makes sense to use that registry, and possibly we should ask IANA to add a column to it to say can be used in this, and then set that on the ones that we want it, and people can then add additional things there. And that, rather than defining another registry with the strings in it, say this registry, this subset.
Pete looks like he just ate a bad clam. He's stepping up to the mic.
I like that. Pete looks like he ate a bad clam. Pete Resnick. I disagree with Bron, I think, and I'm not even sure we need a registry in this document in particular. If someone wants to do a configuration something or other for, I don't know, Finger or whatever or FTP or Telnet, God bless, let them do it. And I mean, and no one's going to know what the format is because our document doesn't define it for that. I don't need, I think we say for the service you want, use the entry from the protocol list, and here's how we do these half dozen protocols. And if you want a new one, you got to write a new document to tell us how to write the entry file for it.
So to clarify, you're arguing we maintain our own registry in this document?
I don't even know. I'm saying no registry whatsoever.
No.
We don't need an extra column.
Ernst.
Agree with Pete's, and I seem to remember that in the 90s we had a couple of registers that had different names, trivially different names for the same thing. Character set or something like that. Simply referring to the existing registry and saying use names from here is simplest and best.
John putting his foot in it. I mean, I agree that use names from this registry, don't invent stuff. And just for reference, the service names registry has approximately 20,000 entries, and making any changes to it, it's going to be a big deal. Yeah.
Ron hopping back in?
Yeah. My big problem is precisely CalDAV versus CalDAV-S. People are going to pick a random one of them unless we're really clear you use this one, not that one, in something that's referable to. And I take the point, 20,000 items is not a registry you want to say add another column to. You wind up like the trace headers in the mail headers registry. On the other hand, we should specify a list somewhere. And if we're specifying in this document, we are creating a shadow registry of sorts. And why not make it a registry at that point?
Okay, we'll take that to the list. I think we have time to hash this out. Yep. Okay, next up is Mauro with Object ID, Account ID. Yes.
Okay.
Mauro, you should have control of the slides as well.
Yeah, great. Okay, this is an extension to Object ID to allow Object ID to work in IMAP mailboxes that have other shared mailboxes inside of them. Well, first, a brief introduction to Object ID. So you have, it defines certain unique IDs, such as a mailbox ID, email ID, and thread ID. So even if the UID validity changes in the account, you have these persistent IDs to identify mailboxes and emails. Then we have the JMAP access extension, so that it's a guarantee that the mailbox ID and email ID can be used both in IMAP and JMAP, and it allows, among other things, a gradual migration towards JMAP. So there is just one limitation of this extension of JMAP access, is that it assumes that all mailboxes belong to a single, all mailboxes listed in an IMAP account belong to a single JMAP account. Then we have the JMAP email delivery push extension. So basically, you get a push notification with some details of the email, and each one of these push notifications includes an account ID. So, for example, let's say we have this IMAP folder structure with inbox, drafts, but also you also have some shared folders such as sales and support. They also have the same folders, and the server is using unique mailbox IDs, but they are unique per account. So this is the example. Let's say the mailbox ID is M1 for the main account, and M2 draft is also using the same mailbox ID for inbox and draft in the other shared accounts. So when you get for example, when you're using JMAP access, or when you get a push notification, you won't know where the message is located in this structure. So what this extension proposes is to add an account ID identifier to the status responses and also other places, so you can see where, in which account this mailbox is located. Well, this is an example of how it will look like. There's one of the requesting the status for all the folders in an account, and yeah, it includes obviously the account ID and mailbox ID, and this way you can identify them. And that's it. It's a very short, brief extension.
Yep. Thank you, Mauro. I put myself in the queue, chair hat off. Bron and I were looking at this earlier this week, and I was looking at the responses and the status, responses to create commands where you have both the mailbox ID and the account ID. And if you look at the ABNF for IMAP response codes, you can't have multiples, unfortunately. And I'm looking at Alexi, maybe Alexi will have some wisdom here. So I think what we need to do is come up with a compound response code which includes both data items. Does that sound reasonable?
You can have untagged response before the final one, which is clean
yes,
and current.
Yes,
wave.
but I think when we tried that with JMAP Access, we found that clients were not happy getting response codes in unsolicited responses, untagged responses. I'm not looking to solve the problem here today. I want to bring it up.
This is the recommended way of doing it. Well, the other thing is you're also modifying ABNF for existing, clients that only implement the original extension would potentially choke on extra parameters.
Exactly. You brought that up.
That was actually a comment I was about to make.
What if the client has to send an enable command for account ID? That way it will be ready for that case for breaking the ABNF.
Yes, if the client enables it, I think we're on safe ground.
We are in a better condition, yes. If that's the way people want to do it.
Yeah, the server can't spit out both, unsolicited, because a parser that doesn't know about account ID can't deal with it, whether it's in front of the mailbox ID or after the mailbox ID.
Okay. Would you prefer like an untagged response or extending the ABNF?
Let's take it to the list and think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'm taking myself out of the queue. Ben, you're up.
So if the mailbox ID and the account is not unique, and the mailbox account and the account ID also are not going to be unique when you have syndicated accounts, you can have the scenario where multiple organizations are cooperating. For example, the CERN is cooperating with another university and they want to merge the accounts, and I want to share my account with somebody at a different organization. And then you still are going to run into the exact same problem again that you have right now. So what I'm proposing is that you add, in addition to the account ID, you also add a server ID so that you can also support syndicated accounts.
I don't think that makes sense because of in JMAP you don't have that concept. So it would allow you to access a JMAP account and there's no server ID there. So the mapping that JMAP access provides is between on that same server, you'll be able to access that same mailbox and that same email ID. Does not cover multiple server scenarios or multi-tenancy. It's assumed to be the same server. Yeah, for everything else, I guess you could use the IMAP metadata extension if you need to have access to other information.
Are you in the queue?
Arndt, I know several code bases that don't properly tie untagged responses to commands and would be unhappy with an extension that relies on correct relies on them being connected properly. It's unhealthy. That kind of thing is a bug magnet.
Yeah, I think we make this a client opt-in. We can we can massage the grammar to work.
Enable that allows the thing. No, it's a. I said it, I think it's a bug magnet, and a bug magnet doesn't go away. People still write the kind of bugs that they have already.
If this is the service, right? No, clients.
Yeah, clients.
Well, if we are making it opt-in, then if you don't opt in, you're not going to get it. So and if they want to opt in, they will have to fix the bug. So I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
Or if they opt in, we extend the ABNF for response codes, so you can have both in the same response. Either way, the client will know what to expect. But I think we're starting to bike shuttle here a little bit.
Yeah. Anyway, much happier with extending and enable that extends the ABNF such that you can send both of them in a tagged response code. In the response code to the tagged response.
Yeah, chair hat off. I tend to agree with Arne on this. Bron?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say thanks, Mauro, for doing this. It was easy to implement right up until I ran into the problem that my parser barfed on it because it wasn't allowed. But I do agree that once you add an extension that says mailbox ID is in the format ID/ID, for example, it could be account ID/mailbox ID in every place. Once you enable this, it would be very simple to just do that. And then the mailbox ID would just be a compound response once you'd enabled it, and everything would be very smooth and easy. I think that's probably the simplest way to do it, and I'll write something to that effect to the mailing list. If this document hasn't been adopted yet, I'd like to propose that we do adopt this as a working group document. Thanks.
Okay. What I don't know, I don't remember what's allowed inside the allowed characters inside the mailbox ID is a /allow. I need to check that. But if it is, it's a great way to do it, yeah.
I believe / is not allowed in a mailbox ID, but if we had an extension that said that the value that's returned, it is allowed in the type of atom that it would be. So
okay.
The value is
Sounds
a compound
good.
of two things.
We're talking syntactic sugar at this point. We can take this to the list.
Okay, great.
Okay. Any other comments on Object ID? All right, we are on to DKG and unobtrusive signatures.
Hi, folks. Thank you for considering this. Kai and Andrew and I have been working on this, and we've had some good feedback from the group about unobtrusive signatures. Next slide, or did you give me control? Yes, you gave me control. So nice. Okay. Yeah, so as a reminder for folks who this has slipped off your stack or didn't see it in the first place, the goal is to remove friction from making an end-to-end cryptographic signature over a clear text email message. We're not talking about encrypted mail. We're talking about reducing all of the pain points that keep people from just signing all of their outbound mail. This is part of a larger project, but one goal is I want to just be able to tell my mail user agent sign everything I send and not worry that it's going to cause a hassle or a headache. I'm going to skip over the rationale in more detail here, but just tell you that the mechanism for that ends up producing a novel signature arrangement. Legacy mail user agents, existing ones, don't notice that there's a signature at all. A failed signature is explicitly the same thing as not having a message that is unsigned. We don't want to see any additional warning messages from those, and it should just be hidden. This is what the definition of unobtrusive. The mechanics of it are we basically base64 encode your cryptographic signature object and stuff it in a specially named, specially positioned header called SIG. It is defined initially for OpenPGP, but there's a slot that would make it pretty easy to drop in a CMS signature object, and I could probably even come up with a transformation mechanism to take existing multi-part signed messages and turn them into these things. As a bonus, the message headers are signed, just like RFC 9788. Because there's no point in introducing new signing mechanisms that don't protect the entirety of the message that the sending mail user agent actually produces in 2025. So,
Hey, DKG, real quick, don't feel the need to rush. We're good on time.
okay, great. Sorry, I was
No,
speed
no worries.
pedaling
I
here.
wasn't sure if that was your normal speaking pace or if you were trying to hurry.
I'll dial it back to 0.6 acres. Right. So we brought this to dispatch at IETF 123, which recommended MailMaint possibly to talk to DKIM folks. We brought it to MailMaint after IETF 123 and had some good discussion on the list. And there was some talk about, can we align this with DKIM? As engineers, it's nice to have something that all sort of fits together the way that we want it to fit together. And if we can reuse mechanism, we like to reuse mechanism. But I think in the course of a couple of months of discussion, we came to the conclusion, or I'm certainly leaning towards the conclusion, and the list didn't seem to object, that it doesn't make sense to try to align these things. They're doing substantially different things from different parties with potentially different mechanisms, and the goals aren't the same, and we don't want either one to sort of hold up the other. So I think this doesn't belong in DKIM. I think this will work. And there's ongoing discussion and improvements happening on GitLab. There's a link there if you have the slides available. The remaining outstanding nuance that's under discussion, one is about how do we handle if there are mismatches between the outer message header and the message headers that were signed. There were 2 merge requests on that. The editors seem to have landed on merge request 19, so we probably will release a new version shortly with that conclusion. And then Tavi has also given a bunch of interesting feedback about message normalization, which we're trying to figure out if we can land. I'm having a bit of trouble understanding, if we're going to say here's a new type of message normalization, I'm hoping that we can have a very robust and clear understanding of what that means. And if it's not robust and clear, I'm inclined to say that's a separate project, and let's sort of portion that off to a separate process. I see the mere message of message normalization has raised Bron to the queue. Bron, do you want to jump in?
Yes, indeed it has. I would be very happy for the message normalization to be the same thing that DKIM's relaxed is, which for the body is basically that end lines are normalized, so they're all correctly in wire format, and that if there is no end line at the very end, then one gets added, and that's it. It basically says if the file doesn't end with a carriage return line ending, then add that to the normalization, otherwise doesn't change anything. I think that would make it very easy to transit through other things that are doing DKIM signatures without breaking them and without breaking this, and that would make me happy.
And so that's it. There's no attempt to say, make sure things are 7-bit clean. There's no attempt to do any of that. It just says this is.
No, it just says you put an end line on if there isn't one.
Perfect. Okay.
Question for Bron. Do you unfold as part of your normalization?
This is for body only, and this thing is only touching the body. It doesn't mess with the message headers on the surrounding email, and so it doesn't.
Yep,
that's
fair
not
enough.
Significant.
Well, there are MIME headers in the body of a message. And I think what you're telling me is you don't deal with, you treat those as though, you don't even care if it's a MIME
As far as
message.
we're concerned, the body is lines of text, and so the normalization for that is just it's lines of text, and we don't do any normalization on that other than that final line gets an end line if it doesn't have one.
Got it. Okay. So, Bron, to the extent that you can send a message about that to the list, that would be great. But I'm going to try to remember that, and I will write it down and take it from the notes someplace as well. Last slide is I am, on behalf of all of the editors of the draft, we want to encourage additional review and feedback and implementations from the working group, but we would also love to see this work adopted by the group if people are up for it. Yeah, I'm open to hearing people's feedback on it, and I can go in more detail. Barry.
This is Barry Leba. I think the document and the discussion are both in a state where adoption is appropriate, and I support it.
Thank you. And I see Alexa in the chat also saying, please adopt DKG's draft. Murray?
Since Andy's in the room, the charter says things about, is this too big for the scope of this working group? What is your opinion on that? Let's start there.
I'm going to do the typical weasel word stuff and say, what does the working group think?
Well, the working group so far is,
And I think everyone said adopt, right?
yeah, I'm trying to make sure that we don't run into that language that was put in the charter about what's too big for this scope. This is a maintenance group, not a development group, not primarily a development group.
Well, okay. This is Barry Lieba, former AD, but speaking as a working group participant. Yeah, this is arguably not maintenance, but it's also, I would normally say that something involved in encrypted messaging is too big for this working group. DKG and his gang have come up with something that is contained enough and simple enough that I think it works, and I think it does fit into what we're doing.
Thanks, Barry. Let me just reinforce here a little bit of messaging rigor. This is not about encrypted messaging. This is about signed messages. I know that the cryptography is involved, but I just want to be clear.
I misspoke.
Go ahead, Alexi.
Yeah, as long as we are not doing any crypto here and just using it output of work done elsewhere in security area, this is just a new packaging format. Well, variant, right, in a way. So I think it's contained enough. So it's probably easy enough to swallow.
Mostly I bring this up because I want to have the discussion someplace rather than Andy getting caught later going, this exceeds the charter. And the distinction to me is most of the work that we've been talking about today is extensions to IMAP or tweaks to stuff like that. This is new, this is novel. And I want to make sure we're all okay with that. I'm sorry?
No, I get your point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not insane. Thank you.
No, I get your point. I would suggest we proceed and then let me figure out whether it's a charter issue or not. My suspicion is it definitely is on the edge. Yeah.
This is why I brought it to dispatch last time, right?
Yeah. To further what Lexi said, we are just taking existing art off the shelf and using it in a unique way, but we're not really generating new protocols here, per se.
Well, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is we get it to IESG and they say recharter. So.
Right, or this is Barry, or we preemptively recharter now. I mean, chartering is not that expensive a process, so adding a sentence to the charter and putting it through, why not?
I think it's also, let's adopt it. We can see how much work it is. If it's consumed like 70% of all mailing list discussions, that might be a signal to our area director that maybe we should take it out. And if it turns out to be very simple, then, we'll just be done.
Go ahead, Pete.
I mean, not all of the previous ADs have gotten up to the mic, so I think this is right. Right. I'm just going to give you the third alternative, which is we take this to completion if it looks like it's quick enough. We bail if it is not, but we take it to completion. And so long as we have Andy for cover, if the IESG whines, we can also do a quick spin up, spin down working group for a single document. Yep. It adds a couple of weeks. It's not the end of the world. So,
I mean, the other point I would think is if we do this here versus starting up another working group, this would be the exact same audience that's in that other working group.
We'll just boff it here. Anyway, did I hear right? This went to dispatch and dispatch said do it here?
Yeah, correct.
Oh, that's pretty good ammunition right there. So.
Question for DKG, and I think I know the answer. I'm assuming you have implementers already doing work or planning to do work, correct?
Yes, I am one of those implementers. I have a patch for generating it that is about to land in Emacs message mode, very widely used mail user agent. I believe that Kai Engert, one of the other co-authors, is working on putting this into Thunderbird. And we welcome other feedback from other mail user agent implementers. Kai is in the messaging queue, in the chat, he says correct. So we have at least 2 implementers right now.
Yep. Yep. Beautiful.
I think just an extra point, we with a lot of email related security stuff, we try to do it in LAMPS, and I think our conclusion is people in LAMPS are too concentrated on crypto, so this is a better audience for it anyway. So
Like I said before, I'm just happy to have the discussion on the record. So, you know, thanks.
Ben?
I know I'm hitting a hornet's nest there, but you mentioned SMIME, CMS. Could you please also specify how this is going to be used for SMIME? Because I've already heard people asking for this, and you know why.
Ben, that is great. I would love to specify it, and the way that I will do that is I will merge your pull requests. So
I'm sorry, I don't have the confidence for that.
What I'll do is I'll take a crack at it, and you can take a look and tell me that I think this would work for SMIME.
I don't have seriously, I don't have a clue about it. If you don't, then I am.
No, I do have a clue. I've just been trying to avoid making this a what do you call it, a bilingual document, because when you make it a bilingual document, then you can't get anybody to say that it's all correct. You have to get somebody who speaks CMS to say it's correct, and then you also have to get somebody who speaks OpenPGP to say it's correct. And I speak more OpenPGP than I speak CMS, but I can fake CMS well enough to try. So I will open an issue saying, let's specify how to do it with CMS in the document. And then maybe folks on the list here can tell me, maybe there's somebody who speaks enough CMS whose name might start with Alexei and end in Melnikov, can tell me whether it's plausible or not.
Sounds great. We will put out a call to adopt this shortly. Any other comments on this? All right. Thanks, DKG. We have 3 minutes left for any other business.
Thank you all.
Any other business going once? Hans-Jörg? Oh, sorry. Alexei.
Oops. Hear me? Yeah. Very short one. So in 1st of February or last day of January, there will be the FOSDEM open source conference in Brussels. And some of the participants here, including Ben, Arndt, and Mauro, and myself, are co-organizing 3rd time in a row a modern email dev room. And we would like to invite and encourage people, especially presenters here, to consider submitting a proposal for talk to the open source audience on some of their work here, and everybody else, of course, also to join the event. Thank you.
I don't think there would be any objection if you want to announce that on the list.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you all in Shenzhen in 4 months.
Did we get a note taker? Yeah.
Usually they're so clean, I just post them as is.
So just making sure we picked one that I completely missed that we did that at the beginning. Nice job. You did most of it.
No, thanks for bringing up the, thanks for keeping my ass out of hot water by asking about the signature thing.
Oh, yeah. That was more for Andy. I know the hot water.
Yeah.
Pete says it in the chat. There are 6 former area directors.